4. Welcome back to our study in the book of Romans. This is Sonship Orientation. This is session 78. I just need us to move on through the notes and really get these done. We do have long ways to go. So here are the two conditions that define a simple son. Number 1, it is a state of being one-dimensional in the understanding and appreciation of your Father's business and how you fit into it. Yeah, you will know some things, but it's going to be a very basic understanding. The second part of this is important, is that it's a state in which you're deficient in really knowing about the subtleties of the policy of evil and how it's going to attack you and victimize you. So you do know some things about your Father's business and how you're going to fit into it, but on the other hand, you don't know. You're not multidimensional yet. You just got a very basic idea. Same way with the policy of evil. You have a very basic understanding of the policy of evil. You're going to need subtlety to be able to show you how to look through so you don't get beguiled, bewitched, those things we're talking about at the end of the last session. All right, now, I told you that when you get to be a simple son, what you get is this idea of, I've kind of arrived, I don't really need to go anywhere. Look at the admonition that Paul gives right here at the very beginning. Romans 12:3, at the start of your education, look what he warns you about. For I say through the grace given unto me to every man that is among you, not to think of himself more highly than he ought to think. You know what he's warning you at the very front? Don't get carried away. What you're about to learn is only going to make you one-dimensional. Don't get to thinking you know it all, because you don't. You're going to get that exhortation right there at the first. But to think soberly, as God hath dealt to every man the measure of faith. You're only going to have a measure of this. And we'll talk about that more in detail when we get over there. Just going back to that word subtlety, I'd like to show you this in Acts 13. Actually, you know what? I think for the sake of time, I'm going to skip Acts 13. You can see it in your notes, but in Acts 13, Paul and Barnabas run into a guy who is a sorcerer, and there's a real description of what he does over there, and that's the subtlety of the policy of evil. I'm just going to leave you with that. For folks that don't have the notes that are watching on the DVD, that's Acts chapter 13, verses 4 to 11. And what you're really looking for there is in verse 10, where he is full of subtlety, an enemy of all righteousness, and he perverts the right ways of the Lord. Those things are crucial to understanding what's happening with the policy of evil. So once you move now and you get subtlety, what's the nomenclature? What's your title now? You're no longer a simple son. What are you now? Young man. You're a young man. And as a young man, just as I gave you the two characteristics of a simple son, let me give you them of a young man. And let me get past this Acts 13. Here are the two conditions that define a young man. An extreme acuteness in penetrating and discriminating the finer points of the Father's business and your part in it. Do you see the difference here? Back when you were a simple son, you had a very basic understanding of the Father's business, and you only had a partial understanding of what you're going to be doing in it. When you get subtlety, all of a sudden, you see things about the Father's business you didn't even know existed before, and you see how you're going to be a part of that in ways you never even thought about. Secondly, you're going to get extreme acuteness in penetrating and discriminating the finer points of the satanic policy of evil. So you're going to begin to see through the things that the policy of evil is going to start sending your way. Now, just to give you an example of this, and this is where we're going to take up, not next week, but the week after, which is why I have to get through these notes. I want to give you an example of subtlety. When you go out, when anybody goes out at night and looks out, or even in the daytime, you look up, you see the sun, or at night you see the moon and the stars. That's what you see. Even with that illustration, when you get, that's going to begin to change for you in this education. Actually, it's going to change for you back here, right here. But when you get subtlety, you're going to really change what you are looking at and what you're perceiving and what you're observing when you look up at the sky. And I'm going to start this here But in a moment, I'm going to make a statement that's going to make us sidestep for just a bit. And we're not going to come back to this until the Sunday after next, where you're really going to learn some things about the creature and about what you're going to be doing in the heavenly places. And I think you'll be pretty excited to see all of that. But there is something about your Father's business that I want to talk to you about here. When He finally establishes His residence on this earth, and we know on the timeline where that's going to be out here in the kingdom. And when He establishes His residence on this earth, and we move into the dispensation of the fullness of times, which is not the only age out there. Remember in Ephesians 2 it talks about ages plural to come. There's actually a number of ages that are going to be out in eternity. The land of Israel will become the gate of heaven that was talked about back in Genesis chapter 28 verse 17. I'm not going to turn you back there for time's sake, but you remember in that vision, Jacob had that vision and he saw the land, and then he was so astonished he said, surely this is the gate of heaven. And he said, I saw angels ascending and descending, not descending and ascending. What's the difference? If this land in the land of Israel, let's just, here's the Dead Sea, and you come down the Dead Seas like this, and you're looking at the land area. When he sees this land area, and he says, that's the gate of heaven, he said, I saw this ladder, and he said, I saw angels ascending, going up from here, and descending, coming back to here. You know what that order makes? That makes this the central place. That's where God's going to set up His residence. If He had done it the other way, I saw a ladder that went up to heaven, and I saw angels descending and ascending, that would have made that the central place. So the order of that is very important to look at. But the Father's going to run His business there. Now, there's something else you need to know about this. When God creates the heavens, when God creates the heavens, and this is let's just go ahead, here's the earth. When He creates them with a barrier between them. Although what it was in creation is very different than the way you're looking at it today. I'll show you that, but it's very, very different. There was a barrier. That barrier was not meant to be permanent. How was God going to fix all of that? Listen carefully. He created Adam, and through Adam and mankind as sons, working in conjunction with their heavenly Father, who would put His residence on this earth, God was going to make it so that there was a function between the earth and the heaven that would cause all of that to operate as a single unit. But that barrier, I'm not talking about the kind of barrier that's there now. It was a different thing. But that barrier was put there to be fixed by the Father-Son relationship. In other words, what is adoption in any age? It's laboring with your Father in what He's doing. That was going to be part of the godly labor that was going to be going on there. Now, I'll just jump you ahead. When you get to the flood, God has to wipe everything out. After the flood, here's what God does. He stretches out the heavens. It's actually at the Tower of Babel, but it is right after the flood. He stretches out the heavens like a curtain. We're going to read those passages. I don't know if we'll read them today, but we are going to read them. What does it do when you stretch something out? You know what I think of? I keep thinking of the shower curtain. You ever seen a shower curtain? You close it all up, it's all right there. But when you get in the shower to keep the water, you pull that, you stretch that thing out, it makes a barrier all the way across. Now, the thing is covering a lot more distance than it was before. Before God stretched out the heavens, everything was much closer. Do you remember what they said at the Tower of Babel? Let us build a tower that may reach where? Unto heaven. Exactly. And there was something going on with the relationship between heaven and the earth that you could actually transverse into the heavens that close. God says, you know what? Now I need more than that natural barrier that's there. God stretched out the heavens, and now if you're going to get out into the heavens, oh my. You're not going to do it with a tower, are you? Now it's going to be very different. So God put some things in place here to keep that from happening. Nimrod knew how to do that. By the way, just for those of you that want to study it out, there's someone in the bottomless pit that's going to be let out, and the Antichrist is going to learn from them how to do that. And that's what he's going to attempt to do. When he comes out, remember the beast and the false prophet are thrown into the bottomless pit, and then remember, and then Satan is put in the bottomless pit. The beast and the false prophet cast a lake of fire. Sorry, my mistake. Satan is put into the bottomless pit. When he comes out of the bottomless pit, do you remember that last great battle? You know, we have it up on the timeline. Do you know what he is seeking to do when he is rounding up all the rebels of the world? He is going to try to traverse back into the heavens from the earth, because if he can do that, there's something he will accomplish in that to hold on to his possession of heaven and earth. And that's what's going to happen when he is let loose out of that pit. Now, that's something else that we just need to take other time to talk about, not now, but what I'm trying to get to is this. One of the things that you're going to do in your glorified body is all of these defects that God put in here to keep that from happening now, you're going to undo those. There's a second thing you're going to do. There are linchpins or strongholds up in the heavens where it's all put together. The Bible talks about, those of you that got the heavenly places, you've seen some of this already. There's doors, windows, pillars, foundations. All of those things are out there, and they're really out there. That's not language of accommodation. Satan, watching God make the heavens, knows exactly where... If you talk about the keystone in a building, do you know what that is? If you remove the keystone, what happens? The whole building comes down. Everything is resting on that. Satan knows where those linchpins are in the heavenly places, and he built strongholds in them. Dying to tell you something right here, but if I do, it'll take me 15 minutes to do it. We'll never get done. Oh! No. Oh, maybe I'll do it after the session. Oh, y'all go, glory. Oh, okay. You know, phooey on those people on the DVD. You know, we're getting it. That's the advantage of being here, right? Okay. All right. So you're not only going to fix that, those strongholds up there, you're going to undo those. Now, we're going to talk about that kind of stuff in 2 Sundays. And you're going to learn some more about that. But you understand, I can only tell you so much about it because you really have to go through the education that explains all that to you so it'll make sense. But if I just say it, I mean, that's something to think about. So the last thing I need to tell you about this is let's talk about the creature. Here's the heaven, here's the earth. Let me tell you what the creature is. The creature is all of creation minus the earth. And you're supposed to look at that, when you look up there, you're supposed to look at that in 2 ways. The first way you're going to be told to look at it is as a creature. That's how you're told to look at it. A living creature that does something. You're actually going to enable that creature to now begin to do that. The second way you're going to look at that creature is as a building or an edifice. And it's in that, and you say, well, which is it, a creature or a building? It's both. It is both. It's a living creature, but it's a building. And folks, because you are sons that are being educated as sons, you're going to sit in that building and run God's business. This is what's going to be happening. Now, Romans 8:19. When we return, you understand, we stopped in 14 and 15, so not far when we get back. For the earnest expectation of the creature. What is an expectation? Is the creature looking forward to something? Yes. You look out and you go like, that creature, that doesn't even look like a creature, and it doesn't look like it has life in it. That's because you're going to restore that. That creature is going to look very different once we get out there. And it's going to act differently. And you know what? It's not going to act the way it wants. You're going to run it. You're going to determine how that creature acts. For the earnest expectation of the creature waiteth for the manifestation. What's a manifestation? An appearance, right. Somebody shows up. Who's showing up? The manifestation of the sons of God. Verse 20, I should have highlighted again. For the creature was made subject to vanity. What is something that's vain? Vanity. We talked about it. Empty. It's void. When you look up at the creature now, you know what it looks like? Nothing. Doesn't look like anything alive. He was made subject to that. Who made him subject to that? God did. See, I used to read that and I go, Satan did that. Let me show you. God did that. For the creature was made subject to vanity, not willingly, so the creature has a will. Yes? He has a will. Not willingly, but by reason of Him who has subjected the same, the creature, in hope. In other words, the one that made him subject to vanity is the same one that said to the creature, I'm giving you hope. Who's the one that gives him hope? That's God. Why did God do that to the creature? That's right, because Satan can't get a hold of the creature and utilize him for his own purposes. So God says, you know what? I'm going to disable the creature. It's like, here's the creature, and all of a sudden, he just powers down and there's nothing. And Satan's in there going like, I'm pulling levers and pushing buttons and the thing's not moving. And God says, that's right. You're going to undo all that. You are going to know what to do to undo all that and bring life back to the creature. Intelligent life. By the way, not just life it moves, like Frankenstein. It is alive, not that. But intelligent life where that creature finally does that for which it was created. By the way, when God creates the heaven and the earth, I just throw this out there, you can do what you want to with it, but here it is. When does Satan rebel? See, I used to always think it was way before the creation. Actually, day 2. 3 days before man shows up. Day 2 is when the rebellion takes place. We'll talk about that again too. Lots of stuff to talk about in a couple of weeks. So, by reason of him who has subjected the same in hope, because the creature itself also shall be delivered from the bondage of corruption. That's what the Bible's calling it that. A bondage of corruption. If you're in bondage, what does that mean? You're restrained. You can't get... Okay? And corruption. He's going to deliver it from bondage of corruption into the glorious liberty of the children of God. We already know He's waiting for the manifestation of the sons of God. He said, wait for y'all to get... The creature's up there saying, I'm waiting for y'all to get up here. You're thinking, hurry up and teach us. The creature's going, hurry up and get here. This is the way this is happening. For we know, now He's changing. He's not using the word creature anymore. Now He's doing something else. For we know that the whole creation, what does that involve? Heavens and the earth. This is the whole creation. Groaneth and travaileth in pain together until now. And he's going to go on and talk about that. Now, we're not after that right now, but what I'm trying to get you to is to see that the creature is something different from the whole creation. Or he would have just said creature all the way through. Or he would have said creation back up there. But that's not the words that he's using there. And by the way, Your ability to run that creature is directly connected. In fact, you're told about that. Not only are you introduced to that back here in your sonship establishment, but when you get to the book of Corinthians, you're told that you're going to judge angels and judge the world. Don't think of the earth. It said world. The Bible uses the word world in more than one way. Do you remember? Well, 1 Corinthians 6:1, dare any of you having a matter against another go to law before the unjust and not before the saints? You understand what he's saying here? You guys in a local assembly have an argument or a disagreement, and instead of settling it among the saints who are supposed to have godly wisdom, you're going to lost people to settle your issues. Do ye not know that the saints shall judge the world? And if the world shall be judged by you, are you unworthy to judge the smallest matters? You know, God's saying, if you're going to run my business, you can't do this. What's wrong with you? You should be able to do this, no problem. Let's keep reading. Know ye not that we shall judge angels? And we're saying judge. You're not talking about banging the gavel on the desk and saying guilty. He's talking about judge, as the Bible uses this word, in other words, to rule over and orchestrate and send them out to do things. How much more the things that pertain to this life? If you're going to tell angels what to do, you mean you can't answer these little matters? If then you have judgments of things pertaining to this life, set them to judge who are least esteemed in the church. I speak to your shame. Is it so that there is not a, wise man among you? He's saying, you guys, what do you get at the end of level 2? Wise man. You don't have a level 2 son in your assembly. What is wrong with y'all? Do you know why? You say, would you want the church to do that? When you do that, you are putting into practice the very skills you're going to use out in the creature. That's part of the sonship apprenticeship that takes place. Is there not a wise man among you? No, not one that shall be able to judge between his brethren. These judgmental decision-making skills. You guys don't have anybody can figure that out? Do you see what the real rebuke here is? Not about going to the lost courts. The real rebuke is you guys are supposed to have a wisdom that exceeds theirs, and you don't. That was the rebuke about that. But brother, go at the law with brother, and that before the unbelievers. Now therefore there is utterly a fault among you, because you go to law one with another. Why do you not rather take wrong? And why do you not rather suffer yourselves to be defrauded? Nay, ye do wrong and defraud, and that your brethren. Now when we get to Corinthians, we're going to talk about the rest of that issue there. But what I'm trying to show you here is that there's a need for an assembly to move through this, and Paul's actually rebuking them for not taking that up. Now, I'm about to make this statement to you that I was going to make before, and that is, the thing that you're going to do when you undo these blocks and you take back over those areas that Satan in the heavenly places has built strongholds, you are going to actually do what the Bible called to be done on the second Sabbath after the first. What was the first? You have 6 days of creation, right? What happens on the 7th day? You know, God rested from creating, right? There's the first Sabbath. So He spends the first week getting it all ready. He creates it all, and He forms it. All of that's done. Then you're going to go through the next 6 days. You have that Sabbath. Before God comes in on the day after the Sabbath, what has happened to Adam and Eve? They've already fallen. They've eaten of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Satan doesn't waste any time because here's what he knows. Something is going to happen on the second Sabbath. I'm going to tell you now what it is, and that's what we're going to step aside to look at. There is a doctrine of the Sabbath that you must have in your thinking. And by the way, at that time, is there any Israel program at work? No. No. God, but here's what's going to happen here. God, on the second Sabbath, is going to bring His residence down to this earth, and He is going to dwell on this earth and start His kingdom on the second Sabbath. Now, I say that to you, but you have to be able to see that in the Scripture. And there is where we're going to step aside and see it. Now, we're going to go fast. You have notes, so you're welcome to read over these at home, over and over. So if I go a little bit quick, you can go back over the notes and you can see this. But what I need you to see is the second Sabbath issue. There is a second thing that's always at work here. So the first thing we have to do is we have to set ourselves up to understand exactly what we're talking about in the Sabbath. Because normally, when you talk about the Sabbath, what does everybody understand? The Sabbath is what? Sunday. I'm sorry? Day of rest? Okay, give me a number. What day of the week is it? It's the seventh day. That's right. And now, here's what the church has done with that. Look, because you have in your calendar, you have Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And we always look at that and we go, well, Sunday is the day of rest, but actually the seventh day is Saturday. So if you were a Jew and you were wanting to practice the Sabbath, which you don't do in the dispensation of grace, even if you are a Jew, but if you were, you would do it on Saturday. And by the way, that's when they do it. But if you go over to Israel, you'll find out that's when they do it. They don't do it on Sunday. And those days, by the way, they run from 6 o'clock in the evening to 6 o'clock in the evening. They don't start at midnight. So there's another difference. But what I need to do is get this Sabbath thing out of the way. How much time we got left to do this? Okay, I think we can get this done. So let me take you to Exodus chapter 20. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work. Sounds like the creation week, doesn't it? Do you know what the Sabbath was? It was a sign to Israel to remember something that was happening back there on the day when God labored 6 days and rested on the seventh. In fact, He's going to tell them this is an everlasting covenant between me and you to remind you of that thing back there so you never lose sight of it. But let's keep reading. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor, do all thy work. But the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work. Thou and thy son, thy daughter, thy manservant, maidservant, the cattle, or the stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days, do you see how He takes them back to that? For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. Now, that is the weekly Sabbath. Now, there's some things that we need to get established about the weekly Sabbath because that's not the only kind of Sabbath that there is. But I do want you to see this thing about, in fact, let's just do this. When you're talking about the Sabbath, what you're going to talk about, I guess I'll just have to show it to you. But we've talked about God's Jehovah-ness and grace. The Jehovah compound names, Jehovah Rophika, Jehovah Jireh, Jehovah Nissi, Jehovah Ramah, all those compound Jehovah names, there are 7 of them. Those are the 7 names that describe God in what He will do for the nation of Israel to make them that great nation He promised in the Abrahamic covenant. To make them the tool by which He will reconcile the earth back to Himself. Those 7 compound names talk about those 7 things that He will do. And He actually talks to them about this before they ever get to Mount Sinai. Exodus 16:22, and it came to pass on the 6th day they gathered twice as much bread, 2 omers for one man, and all the rulers of the congregation came and told Moses, and he said to them, this is that which the Lord said, tomorrow is the rest, the holy Sabbath unto the Lord. Bake that which you will bake today, and seethe that you will seethe, and that which remaineth over, lay up to be kept until the morning. Remember, this is the manna thing, remember? They're supposed to gather it every day, but on the 6th day, what do? Twice as much, because you're not going to go out and gather it on the Sabbath. Not going to be any out there. It's a day of rest. He says right there, he says, you know, this is a holy Sabbath to the Lord. And you know what that is. Same principle. Exodus chapter 20, verse 8. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. By the way, if someone tells you to remember, what does that mean? It means they've already told you about it once before, haven't they? So he's telling them in Exodus 20. By the way, Exodus 20, that's the law. So ever before that, he had already told them something about this. And indeed it is the case. Now let's just keep going. Verse 9. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, thy son, daughter, manservant, maidservant, cattle, stranger in thy gates, for in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is. Rest on the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it, from which we get the word holy. So he attached something to that day that made it special to him. So they can work 6 days, but they have to take that seventh day off. You can see in our own culture where a lot of our laws came from. Remember they used to have blue laws and you couldn't open up your business on Sunday and all that kind of bit. It came from this kind of a deal, all right? Now, and you see how God references it back to the creation day. Now let's go to Exodus 31 where we're going to see the Sabbath defined again. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak thou also unto the children of Israel, saying, Verily my Sabbath shall ye keep, for it's a sign between me and you throughout your generations. So now we understand that the Sabbath is a sign between God and Israel, that ye may know that I am the Lord that doth sanctify you. Ye shall keep the Sabbath therefore, for it is holy unto you. Every one that defileth it shall surely be put to death. Wait a minute. You mean you defile the Sabbath, you're going to get put to death? God says, this is how important this issue is to me. This is more than just, I'm giving you a day off. And if you come into work, we kill you. That's not what it's about. This day meant something to God that they were supposed to keep in their minds, and it was so important that there was the death penalty attached to violating it. For whosoever doth any work therein, that soul shall be cut off from among his people. 6 days may work be done, but in the seventh is the Sabbath of rest, holy to the Lord. Whosoever doth any work in the Sabbath day, he shall surely be put to death. Wherefore the children of Israel shall keep the Sabbath to observe the Sabbath throughout their generations for a perpetual what? Covenant. God said, this thing is a big deal. I need you to see it that way. It's a sign between me and the children of Israel forever. For how long? Forever. Right. Someone would say, oh, well, that means today in the dispensation of grace. No. This thing is given to Israel in her program. Paul's going to tell you plainly that's not in force for Jew or Gentile today. So you have to keep this in its context. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, and on the seventh day he rested and was refreshed. Now, there's more than one kind of Sabbath in your Bible. And you have to understand that Paul's going to warn us. We got out of this in Colossians 2, where he was warning us about the policy of evil using the things of Israel's program to try to rob us of our reward. Remember, we talked about those things. One of those things was the rudiments of this world, and we know that that's the law. In fact, I want to take you back to Colossians, and I want to show you, listen, just so there's no misunderstanding, you are not supposed to observe the Sabbath. Doesn't matter if you're a Jew or Gentile. You're in the dispensation of grace. You don't observe the Sabbath. There are churches today, their preacher dresses up like an Old Testament high priest, and he goes around and he teaches them all the things of the Israel program, and they eat like Israel, and they dress like Israel, and they talk like Israel, and now they're going to start observing days like Israel, and Paul is going to tell you that's the policy of evil at work. So you can't get caught up in that. Now, Colossians 2, let no man therefore judge you in meat or drink, or respect of a holy day, or new moon, or of Sabbath days. There's a group that meets on Saturday. They're called Seventh-day Adventist. They think they're Old Testament Jews under the law. They have no idea that they're in the dispensation of Gentile grace, and that Paul just got through telling them plainly, you don't observe those things. And he mentions Sabbath days by name. But yet they're going to tell you, and I've heard their preachers preach, I've heard it with my own ears, that we all have the mark of the beast. Do you know why? We go to church on Sunday, and that's the mark of the beast. That's what they preach. And you're on your way to hell because you have the mark of the beast. You go to church on Sunday. You're supposed to go on the Sabbath. And they're so eaten up by the policy of evil, they're totally blinded to the truth. Paul says, don't do that. Those things which are a shadow of things to come. People say, yeah, all those, the new moon, the Sabbath days, those are all a picture of Christ. No, they're not. Paul's writing that over here in the dispensation of grace. Christ had already come. He didn't say there's a shadow of something that's already happened. It's a shadow of things to come. You know what that is? That's out in the kingdom. They're a shadow of something that's going to be happening with Israel out in the kingdom. Duh. Which are a shadow of things to come. But the body is of Christ. You're the body of Christ. You've got your own doctrine that you're supposed to pay attention to. Now I want you to notice that those days, by the way, he doesn't just say of the Sabbath and leave it. He said of the Sabbath days. Do you know why? There's more than one kind of Sabbath. So those days are plural there. I want to show you something about that. Let's go to Exodus 31:18. And he gave unto Moses, when he made an end of communing with him upon Mount Sinai, 2 tables of testimony, tables of stone, written with the finger of God. I want to make sure my mic was on. I had this overwhelming fear. Okay. All right. You know, they've already been doing this golden calf thing, and then Moses up on the mount, you know, remember, well, he's up there. He's come down. He's told them. They said, all the Lord has said we'll do. He goes up. He's with the Lord for 40 days. They're making the golden calf down there like Moses is never coming back. And so God writes, you know, the tables of stone written with his own finger. And now look in verse 12. And the Lord spake unto Moses. He's up there with the Lord. He says, saying, speak thou also unto the children of Israel, verily my Sabbaths plural shall ye keep. What has he already told them about? He's already told them about the 7th day Sabbath. Now, while Moses is up there, he's giving them the rest of the law. And he's saying there's some Sabbaths plural that they're going to keep, and you're going to speak also about those. And so there's some additional information that they're going to be getting about that. Exodus 31:13, this is the very next verse. Speak thou also unto the children of Israel, saying, verily my Sabbath shall you keep, for it is a sign between me and you throughout your generations, that you may know that I am the Lord that does sanctify you. Sounds like what we read before, doesn't it? And it is what we read before. Okay. Now, this collection of Sabbaths, there is a sign. We're fixing to look at some verses that talk about it. We just saw this in verse 13. It turns out to be that the sign of the Sabbath is God's Jehovahness that's going to be put into action on their behalf so that they will be sanctified by Him one day and fit to use in His purpose in the earth. The Sabbath, folks, I'm going to say it like this. The Sabbath hooks Israel to God's purpose on the earth. When was God first going to do that thing? Back here in the very beginning. And that's why He keeps tying it back into the Lord created 6 days and rested on the 7th. All of this is supposed to educate Israel about His Jehovahness and grace. Now I want us to see some of these other Sabbaths very quickly. Leviticus 16:29. And this shall be a statute forever unto you, that in the 7th month, on the 10th day of the month, you shall afflict your souls and do no work at all, whether it be one of your own country or a stranger that sojourneth among you. For on that day shall the priest make an atonement for you to cleanse you, that you may be clean from all your sins before the Lord. It shall be a Sabbath of rest unto you, and you'll afflict your souls by a statute forever. What day did that happen on? Let's go back and look. 7th month, on the 10th day of the month, right? Did that always fall on a Saturday? No. So it's an extra Sabbath. See, that changes from year to year, what day that falls on. So that's an extra Sabbath. And that's the Day of Atonement, by the way. Now let's go to Leviticus 23. Oh, let's see. Yeah, 23:23. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, speak unto the children of Israel, saying, in the 7th month, in the 1st day of the month, you shall have a Sabbath. Well, wait a minute. The 7th month, now the 1st day of the month is a Sabbath. Does that always fall on a Saturday? So now you got another Sabbath in there, don't you? By the way, if you're thinking, Yes, they always fall on a Saturday. If you were going to be so dumb as to think that, let me show you something. The Sabbath happens every seventh day. If the first day is a Sabbath, can the 10th day be the weekly Sabbath? Not unless you got 10 days in a week. All right, I'm just trying to say, this is not the weekly Sabbath. This is what we're trying to get to. In the first day of the month, you'll have a Sabbath, a memorial, blowing of trumpets, holy convocation. By the way, this is the Feast of Trumpets. Happens on the first day of the month. You shall do no servile work therein. You'll make an offering made by fire unto the Lord. Now, Leviticus 23:33. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and the 15th day of the seventh month shall be the Feast of Tabernacles for 7 days unto the Lord. On the first day shall be a holy convocation, do no servile work therein. And the 15th day of the seventh month, you've gathered the fruit of the land, you keep a feast unto the Lord 7 days. On the first day shall be a Sabbath. On the 8th day shall be a Sabbath. And guess what? On the 15th day, that's that feast. That's going to be a Sabbath, because that's the Feast of Tabernacles. Feast of Trumpets, Day of Atonement, Feast of Tabernacles, the 1st, the 10th, the 15th. None of those are not the weekly Sabbaths. Those days don't fall right in order for that to happen. All right. Where are we at? 39? How much time we got left? Leviticus 25:1. And the Lord spake unto Moses Mount Sinai, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, saying to them, When you come into the land which I give you, then shall the land keep a Sabbath. Oh, now the land's got a Sabbath. How often does that happen? Every 7 sevens of years. Well, every 7 years there was a Sabbath, but then there was a Jubilee. 7 sevens of years. But that land is going to get a Sabbath, so let's look at that. Leviticus 25:3. 6 years shalt thou sow in thy field. 6 years you'll prune your vineyard, gather the fruit. But in the 7th year shall be a Sabbath, the rest of the land, a Sabbath for the Lord. You know what that means? Every 7 years, you're supposed to let the land rest. Do you remember when they were carried away captive to Babylon? God said, here's how long you're going to be captive in Babylon, till the land gets back her Sabbaths. If it's supposed every 7 years, the land's supposed to rest a year, and God says, I need 70 years for the land to get back her Sabbaths, for how long had they been disobeying that commandment? Clifford goes, lots. 490 years. God says, 490 years you've disobeyed this thing. So you know what? I'm carrying you out of the land. The land's just going to lay there and get all its Sabbaths back. This is what, but you know what? Every Sabbath was a sign between them and God about something He was wanting to do with this earth. And when they went, well, you know what? We really need the crops. We can get ahead. We can do this. We're going to plan on that 7th year. God says, you're missing the point of what this is about. No, they didn't care anyway. Now, where are we at? Leviticus 25:3, verse 5. That which groweth of its own accord of thy harvest shalt thou not reap, neither gather the grapes of the vine undressed, for it's a year of rest unto the land. You know what? If grapes happen to come up that year and they're over there, He goes, just leave it alone. It's a land of rest, a year of rest for the land. And the Sabbath of the land shall be meat for you, for thee, and for thy servant, for thy maid, and thy hired servant, and thy stranger sojourner, for thy cattle, the beasts that are in thy land, and all the increase thereof shall be meat. Okay, now, the most fundamental of all the Sabbaths, take a guess. The most fundamental Sabbath of all the Sabbaths, what would you think? Huh? The first one. The 7th day Sabbath is the most fundamental of them all, and everything else stems out of that. Now, I'm going to skip the Nehemiah reference because he talks about making known to them. Well, let me just give it to you. Thou camest down also upon Mount Sinai, and spakest unto them from heaven, and gave them right judgments, true laws, good statutes, commandments, and madest known to them thy holy Sabbath, and commandest them precepts, statutes, laws by the hand of Moses thy servant. When did God make Israel know about the Sabbath? When they got to Mount Sinai. Wait a minute. Didn't God establish a Sabbath all the way back in the beginning? He did. But you know what? By design, no one knew about it. No one knew about the Sabbath. So let me ask you a question. How many people were observing the Sabbath from creation till Israel got to Mount Sinai? None. None. The Sabbath is part. Why does God wait to reveal it then? Because it's part of the law. That's why it's there, but He doesn't reveal it to them. And then, and because of its importance, and because of its connection with what He's going to do in His plan and purpose for this earth, that's why He said, same thing in Nehemiah, you'll keep the Sabbath, therefore it's holy unto you. Everyone that defiles shall surely be put to death, because of the importance that God put on that Sabbath. The same thing again in verse 15. Whosoever doeth any work, he'll surely be put to death, and God means business about that Sabbath day. And then in verse 16, that's where you find that that Sabbath is given for a perpetual covenant. Now, I'm kind of skipping through this, but what I need you to know is there is a group out there today that fly under the banner of covenant theology. And what they say is, the church has replaced Israel. We get their blessings, and we're supposed to do their program. Listen to me carefully. The church, the body of Christ, cannot fulfill Israel's program no matter how badly you try. No matter how much you believe you can, you can't. Do you know why? When you leave here, be it by death, let's just do it at the end. Let's do the rapture. Let's just go to the end of the age. At the end of the rapture, where are you going? You can't be used to repossess the earth because you're not going to be here. I don't care how... I'm studying Israel's program. I'm going to repossess the earth. I'm sorry. You're going to be out there. I have an adjective I want to throw in right there, but I'm going to leave it out. It has to do with not being smart. You can't fulfill Israel's program any more than they can fulfill yours. Romans 9, 10, and 11. You know, we get this in between our education here, but Romans 9, 10, and 11 tell you, and we'll cover it when we get over there, I don't have time to do it now, that yes, God interrupted that program with Israel. He brought in this dispensation of grace. The church, the body of Christ, yes, He's got a program with them. But when that is finished, God is going to resume and complete His program with Israel, and He is faithful to the promises that He made to them. He didn't replace them. There's a whole bunch of error out there, folks, and you may be familiar with some of them. There's another one called British Israelism. You ever heard of that one? That there were these lost tribes, and you know what? Really, the people that sit on the throne in England, and they take their oath on that stone, the Jeremiah stone, and Jeremiah the prophet had that, and those lost tribes, and they came to America, and the people that grew up in England and America are really the lost tribes, and they're the true Israel, and the Jews that are over there now, they're not Israel at all. We're the true Israel. And then they teach a doctrine, and now they're going to put you right back under the law. I don't care if you're double-dogged, Israel, you're in the dispensation of grace. Dadgum, why can't... I'm just frustrated. IQ of a carrot. Colossians 2:8. Beware lest any man, remember where we springboard off of this? Any man spoil you through philosophy? Let's get back in Israel's program. Philosophy, I'm sorry. Take the Bible, one end to the other, put it all together with the wisdom of men. Yeah. Vain deceit, Israel's program, tradition of men. Let's just have our little ceremony. Rudiments of the world, let's get the law, and not after Christ. Well, there's where Paul, how about this one? Colossians 2:14. Blotting out the handwriting of ordinances that was against us, which was contrary to us, and took it out of the way, nailing it to the cross. Someone says, I think we need to observe the law. What'd you do? Pull it back off the cross? Really? How'd you do that? He took it out of the way, nailed it to His cross. What are you doing dragging it back in here? I'm upset because the body of Christ is being fooled by a bunch of men who, whether they know it or not, are cooperating with the policy of evil. You say, well, but they're good people and they mean well. Look, I meant well when I was hoeing my grandpa's garden, but I was hoeing up what he planted. Good intentions are not enough. You know what? Because you have no subtlety, you're not able to see through the policy of evil. You get used by the policy of evil every day, just like that. It has no trouble using you. I don't care how pure your intentions are, how much you love Jesus, how much you sacrifice. You're fair game for the policy of evil. Here's the next one. 2:16. Let no man judge you in meat and drink. We did that Sabbath days. Colossians 2:20. Wherefore, if you be dead with Christ from the rudiments of the world, why, as though living in the world, are you subject to ordinances? By the way, notice he didn't say this. Wherefore, if you be dead with Christ to the rudiments of the world, he said from. You know what from is? It's a word of distance. You're removed from that. You're not just dead to it. You're dead from it. And we got whole churches today going like, oh, we need to get back to Israel. Gosh. Do you not see how frustrating it is? Okay. Colossians 3:1. If you then be risen with Christ, seek those things which are above, where Christ sitteth on the right hand of God. Set your affections on things above, not things on the earth, for you're dead and your life is hid with Christ in God. Colossians 2:20. We just read that one, didn't we? Wherefore, if you be dead with Christ from the world, why, as though living in the world, are you subject to ordinances? Touch not, taste not, handle not, which are to perish with using, after the commandments and the doctrines of men. There's this whole line of thinking here that goes along with that. I think I'm going to skip the Revelation deal. It's important. I mean, God has a plan and a purpose connected with Israel. Let me just take you through the verse. And I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and there was no more sea. And I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a great voice out of heaven saying, Behold, the tabernacle of God is with men, and He'll dwell with them, and they'll be His people, and God Himself will be with them, and be their God. God will wipe away all tears from their eyes. There'll be no more death or sorrow or crying. There'll be any more pain. The former things are passed away. And He that sat on the throne said, Behold, I make all things new. And He said unto me, Write, for these words are true and faithful. And He said to me, It is done. I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. I'll give unto him that's athirst of the fountain of the water of life freely. That's what God's going to do at the end when all of this thing is put back together where it's going to be. The New Jerusalem is going to come down. And guess what? God's going to take up His residence in there. It's exactly what that thing was about when He began. And He is going to use, and by the way, He has to save the remnant out in the day of wrath, or none of that's going to be able to happen. Why? Because He's going to use them to do it. Take a look. And God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes. There'll be no more death, sorrow, crying, neither be any more pain, and the former things are passed away. There's the promise that He gives to them that that's going to happen. Take it back to the prophets in Isaiah. And in this mountain shall the Lord of hosts make unto all people a feast of fat things, a feast of wines and the lees, of fat things full of marrow, and wines and the lees well refined. He'll swallow up death and victory, and the Lord will wipe away tears from all faces. The rebuke of His people will take away from all the earth, for the Lord has spoken it. And then in 65:17, for behold, I create new heavens and new earth. Isn't that all what we just read in Revelation? Fifth cycle prophet Isaiah talked about that very thing. That's the culmination of the fifth cycle of judgment, when God is going to bring everything full circle around. How about Isaiah 40:21? Have you not known? Have you not heard? Have it not been told you from the beginning? Have you not understood from the foundations of the earth? Who hath wrought and done it, calling the generations from the beginning? I, the Lord, the first and the last. I am He, declaring the end from the beginning and from ancient times the things that are not yet done, saying, My counsel shall stand, and I will do all my pleasure. And indeed He will. Everything that God said He would do, He's going to do. He's faithful to do it. Nothing's going to be able to stand in the way of it. And now we talk about that remnant, and this is the verse I thought we were going to a moment ago. Verily Thou art a God that hidest Thyself, O God of Israel the Savior. When will they say that? When will they say, oh, you're a God that hides yourself? When will the remnant say that? When the Antichrist unleashes that extermination policy on there, they're going to be going like, God, where are you? Now they'll be saying that, but look, they shall be ashamed, also confounded, all of them. They'll go to confusion together, makers of idols. But Israel shall be saved in the Lord with an everlasting salvation. You shall not be ashamed or confounded, world without end. God is going to do something for them out there, isn't He? And He has to, because His plan and purpose is not going to be able to be fulfilled unless He does. If He doesn't save them, He's lost His original plan and purpose for the earth. Isaiah 45:18, For thus saith the Lord that created the heavens, God himself that formed the earth and made it. He established it. He created it not in vain. He formed it to be inhabited. Who's the number one inhabitant of the earth? God. God said, I'm making that a place for me to live. Created to be inhabited. I am the Lord. There is none else. And so God is going to, and He designed all that from the very beginning. And then look back at Isaiah 40. Let's complete this passage. Have you not known, have you not heard, hath not been told you from the beginning, have you not understood from the foundations of the earth? It is He that sitteth upon the circle of the earth, and the inhabitants thereof are as grasshoppers, that stretcheth out the heavens as a curtain, and spreadeth them out as a tent to dwell in. This is the spreading them as a tent. Look at this next one. Bless the Lord, O my soul. O Lord my God, thou art very great, clothed with honor and majesty, who covers thyself with light as a garment, and stretches out the heavens like a curtain. So there's a spreading them out like a tent, and now a stretching them out like a curtain. Two different things are going on. Again, we'll talk about that in 2 weeks and get an idea of what it is you're going to be doing in conjunction with that. You want me to give it to you in a nutshell? You're going to close the shower curtain. Psalm 104, here it is. Who layeth the beams of his chambers in the waters, who maketh the clouds his chariot, and walketh upon the wings of the wind. The beams of his chambers in the waters? Do you remember what was back there in the beginning? In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was without form and void, and darkness on the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. God had already laid the beams of His chambers in those waters, waiting. I know you haven't gotten there yet, and that's what we'll do next week. Next week, we'll take all this groundwork. You better read these notes. Take all this groundwork, and you're going to see that on the second Sabbath, those beams that were already sitting in those waters, God is going to bring His residence down and sit them right on those beams. And Satan knows if he doesn't do something before the second Sabbath, it's going to be too late to do anything with this earth. All he's done up till then is usurp the heavens. Now he's after the earth. And as soon as God's finished with that first week, Satan goes to work immediately. And before the second Sabbath can come along. But you know what God says? That Sabbath is a sign and a covenant of something I'm going to do that I meant to do back when I started that creation. And He is going to do that, and He is going to accomplish that, and God's got a whole purpose to make that happen. Okay. So that gets us to the end of this. 2 normal sessions next week. But I'm going to tie all this up so that you're going to see the doctrine of the second Sabbath. This is pretty incredible stuff. Once you understand the second Sabbath, I'm going to take you back the next Sunday, and I'm going to show you stuff you're going to be doing in the creature. It's going to be pretty incredible. It'll make the hair on Bob's head stand straight up.